Good morning, YouTube. As usual, I hope y'all are happy, healthy, and doing well, especially for this, the first day of 2022. And let me just say that I hope all of you out there, everyone, has a better 2022 than they did 2021. Let's just keep progressing forward and, man, keep improving. That sounds good. One more side note. I am just a guy talking to my cell phone, so please, you can take anything I say with a grain of salt, kindly. Now, the first entry for 2022, LG firmware update. We're talking C1, guys. I know I'm in front of my C10, but we're actually talking LG C1 firmware update 3.25.10. I mean, this thing is hot off the presses. There is not a lot of information about this. It popped up for me last night, New Year's Eve, around 7 p.m. I found it, just randomly checking. There is no firmware update for the C10. So just randomly checking, and there it was. So I did download it because curiosity got the cat, and as you know, I'll be your test dummy. I didn't want to, but I did. And let me just tell you what happens when I go through this process real quick with these firmware updates. So one comes in at the present. I am using Kalman. So what I do is download the update, start the display, hook up Kalman, and immediately check the brightness. Check my peak brightness through a Dolby configuration file. After that, because of the last few updates on the C10, it is a lot of just making sure that HDMIs work. Currently, the only thing plugged up to the C1 in the bedroom is an XSS, Xbox Series S. And of course, it'll do 4K 60 for sure, 4K 120, whatever. We don't know what's going on. It doesn't actually does 1440p, 120, but it'll do 4K 60. So we make sure that that the HDMIs are working properly. But other than that, it's mostly a, just go through the display. Are there any glaring changes? Do I turn it on and notice something immediately different? Not necessarily wrong. And one of my go-to methods for doing this is by using the art gallery on the displays. I'm very familiar with these stills, these images, and before update, or let me be clear, while this update's going on, or before I start the update, say I'm in gallery mode and I'm looking through my most familiar images. Say this one, very familiar to me. The painting with all the greens and yellows, a little bit of blues and red, all kinds of things in there. That is very familiar to me. A couple of the other images. So study those, download that firmware update, turn it on. Go back to that product gallery. See if I can notice anything different. Now comes Kalman, so we check that peak brightness. Then we go through this HDMI thing, make sure the HDMI ports are working, because as you know, that was a thing on the CX a little while ago. Sorry for repeating myself. So there is absolutely no information out on this. I did find an interesting post on Reddit saying that it is not even out on the Korean website. So I do find that a little fishy, but you never know with Reddit. So let me go ahead and I guess I'll talk about what happened when I went through the product gallery, the images. Nothing. They looked exactly the same. So then I go to Kalman, and through the magic of editing, I will show you what I'm looking at here on my computer screen. This is the Dolby Vision User Display Calibration file. And I don't know how well y'all are going to be able to see this, so I'll just kind of read it for you. Generated by software version 5.1.2.111. Now that's the latest Kalman software version, and it says on 12/31/21. So this is, doesn't give me a time stamp, but I can tell you it was around 7:30, I think. 7:30 in the PM. So it was just terribly interesting that popped up. And if you go down to our T-Max number, you can see that it pushed out 828 nits of brightness on a 10% window. All right. Now I'm going to tell you why that's kind of significant just here in a second. But if you go down, you go the T minimum 0.11, or excuse me, 0.0001. That's pretty black, y'all. Anyway, then we get to our gamma, which obviously was in 2.2. So where does my C1 sit right now? Well, the previous measurement to this one for the peak brightness sat at about 813 nits. So at this point, we drew 825 nits. When I set up the tone mapping curve, I put it to 825. Remember, when we set that curve, we don't want it to be exactly, I don't think anyway, I want it to be exactly at 828. I give it a little headroom there, so set it down to 825. Guys, we're talking about an LG C1 Evo panel. That's a WBE panel. A C1, not a G1, okay? And that is pretty much confined to Kalman's limitations. I believe that the C10, the 65C1, excuse me, the 65C1 that I own in the bedroom, I believe that thing is capable of more than this. I measured 843 nits the first time after break-in. So once I do get a hold of color space and start using that program predominantly, which I really like to do that here soon in 2022, I think that these measurements will get a little higher. I also think I will be able to get to actually do the color correction system properly. Okay, well, closer than I am now. Then we'll add a spectrometer at some point to the meter, and then we'll be spot on. So, I have said all of this to say, I'm not going to be in the business of telling people to download or not download firmware updates. But I am going to document what happens because, like I said, curiosity got the cat. This is the experience I have with my panel. I went from 813 nits to 825 on this guy. Excuse me, 828. Noticeable difference? Absolutely not. But every time I walk into my bedroom, I look at that display when it's on the C1, and that WBE panel is gorgeous. Absolutely stunning, honestly. And right now I'm at a delta error of about 0.7 at 109% peak white on a 10% window. And that is a service menu adjustment. So yeah, the display is beautiful. And I really want to get home that, as I said, I don't want to rate these firmware updates and say, this one's good or bad. I think I did that a little bit last year. I think I thought I was a YouTuber. I'm not. I'm just a guy talking to my cell phone. So, having said all that, there you go. That's what I've found. Like, luminance-wise, I see no difference in 813 or 825 nits. The significance for me is we have not dropped. The panel behind me, the C10, the 77 C10 behind me, has not dropped significantly in brightness in quite some time. But it did happen there again at the end of the year for a little bit. So, I mean, just take it with a grain of salt. I think information sharing is key, man, for all of us in this AV space. And I just want to share my experiences. So that's what happened for me. That's what happened with this update, 3.25.10 for the LG C1. I guess that's about it for us, right? All right, man. Wow. First entry of 2022 went really well. Wow, I can appreciate that. Man, y'all, I'm so excited. I'm just ready to go. 2022. It's going to be great. I hope. Yeah. And again, I wish nothing but the best for all of y'all out there in YouTube land and everywhere else for 2022. So, if you have any questions or comments, good, bad, or indifferent, you can go ahead and pop them right down there below. They are greatly encouraged and greatly appreciated. Yeah, information sharing, knowledge is power. We get stronger the more we learn, all that good stuff. Yeah, I guess it's about that time we could probably wrap a medium-sized bow on this one. You know what time it is. As always, thank you for listening. Be good. Be safe.